You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com. Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining us on the Newsmaker line is the co-author of Barry Horowitz's autobiography, Memoir, if you will, that just recently came out and is doing really well for itself. He is Jason Norman. Are you with me, Mr. Norman?
I am.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So I guess my first question would be, I do know a little bit about your history. I've researched you, but first of all, let's start with the now, and then we'll work backwards and come back, circle back around to the now. How did you end up getting tapped to do Mr. Barry Horowitz's autobiography?
Well, I had actually written an autobiography back in 2020 of a wrestler from ECW named New Jack.
New Jack, yes.
Yes, he sadly passed away a few years later, but ever since, that book came out, and it was by far the best-selling of the ones that I had written. That was my first ghostwritten autobiography, so I figured let's see if I can try this again. So I spent some time looking around, and Barry, I learned that Barry was going to be at a convention in Virginia Beach, and I went over, and we had a very brief, very easy conversation, and shortly after we were working.
Well, that really came together quickly then.
Very.
That's awesome. And I do have questions about New Jack, but we'll get to that in just a second here. How is the book done so far? I know it's been out for about a week now, right?
About a week. I don't have the exact numbers, but looking at Amazon, it seems like it's doing pretty well, at least as far as the hard copy goes. Kindle, I'm not sure yet, but like I said, I don't have the sales numbers, but I'm very confident with how it's looking so far.
That's awesome. And I guess I dabble in writing stuff. I dabble in journalism. I dabble in a lot of things. A jack of all trades, master of none. But when was it that you realized you had the gift to put pen to paper or fingers to a keyboard in this day and age and be an author?
Well, my writing career has been going for quite some time. I guess you could say my writing career actually started back when I was in college, writing for the college newspaper. And when I graduated from Old Dominion University in 2001, I went to work for a newspaper in Suffolk, Virginia, and stayed there for a couple of years. And then when I left there, that would have been in 2006, I went back to grad school, got my master's degree, and that's when my English teaching career began. Now, I can't say exactly when my authoring career started or why it started. I believe I know it took me a long time. I didn't publish my first book until, maybe 2012 or 2013. I wrote a couple of books about movies, and then I ghost wrote a different book, and then which was not wrestling related, and I wrote a book about after my daughter was born in 2017. I wrote a book about her first year, because right around the time she was born, I found out that I'm on the autism spectrum, and that came about, and yeah, the New Jack book was simply something new to try, and it was one of the easier books that I wrote. It only took about 5 months, and that came about. And after that, I decided to keep with the ghostwriting aspect.
Awesome. Interesting that you said about the autism spectrum. I've done some stuff about that with a couple of our prior guests. I am not, as far as I know. I very well could be, but I've never been diagnosed. But my 2 sons are on the autism spectrum, and did a really cool interview about that with a singer named James Durbin, who's also a wrestling nerd like us, and was the singer on American Idol and later for the band Quiet Riot. So very cool guy. If you ever get the chance, one of the coolest people you can talk to in the world. So there you go. Just a plug for James Durbin out there. Okay, so you mentioned New Jack.
Yes.
I'm going to let you in on something. New Jack's the only guy in the history of my show, and I've been doing this since 2002, that I managed to royally tick off on the phone. I mean, I really made him mad, and I do not know why. I've had a few people from ECW explain it to me years later. They said, well, you asked him this, and he had this going on in his personal life, and that probably triggered it. Okay, whatever. But he's a little bit of a scary guy. He was, anyway, a little bit of a scary guy. We all know his history. Was he somebody that you were afraid of at all, or what was the experience like working so closely with him?
Well, I won't say I was afraid of him. He was definitely he was definitely interesting. He he was I'm trying to say how to say this. I was not quite sure which New Jack I would be getting when I called him. Like, there were times where I would call him and he would be very open and wordy, so to speak, and then there were other times where I would call him and I guess I would catch him in a bad mood and he would be very short. Now, the times that I actually went down to meet him, because I did, he only lived a few hours away from me, so I drove down to meet him a few times down to North Carolina, and he was great during those times. Over the phone, it was a little bit different, but one thing I will say is that he was very proud of his career. He was very he did not he was always very candid about it. You know, he was not somebody who was going to go on there and say, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that. You know, he was someone who was he was not someone who was going to apologize for anything. He had a real, you either like me or you don't, and that's up to you, and I'm not going to worry about it, and kind of how I am, and you could tell. The opinion of others is not really a big thing with me, and it wasn't with him. So I think that was a real connecting part with us.
That's awesome, and it's probably not the easiest guy you could have chosen for your foyer into pro wrestling to choose New Jack, because he was
definitely a 180-degree switch to Barry. I tell you, I mean, with New Jack, you had a background that was tumultuous at times, and then the majority of his career was ECW hardcore, and he lived pretty heavy outside of the ring, and then switching over to Barry, who was pretty much a normal guy with an abnormal job. So
that's right.
So he was yes. I don't think I could have chosen two more different wrestlers to write book one and book two.
That's right. And we'll get to Barry in just a second. Final question on New Jack. When you're writing his story, because he told me some stories, and I've seen various interviews that he's done over the years, he tells some stories that might involve the law, to put it mildly. Did you have to go to him and say, I don't think we should put this in a book, because that could get us both in trouble? Was there any of that went on in the decision-making process for the final cut of the book?
No. I mean, there were a few things that he wouldn't talk about, but I was never in a position where I would say to him, I don't think we need to say this. I don't think we need to do this. Yeah. I mean, like I said, there were a few times where I would ask him some things and he would say, I don't want to talk about that, but nothing that I thought needed to be moved around or anything.
Very cool. There, you couldn't have chosen, as you said, two different guys. You could show somebody a Barry Horowitz match and a New Jack match, and they might not even know that both things are considered pro wrestling. Just very different in the ring, and I'm sure out of the ring as well. Like I said, what was the experience like working with Barry Horowitz and talking to him about his life and times in and around the world of professional wrestling?
Well, it was very different. I guess I just thought people would want to know what makes a person stay in the business as long as one has in the role that he has. I mean, but it's like the book says. For someone who hardly ever won, he is still extremely well known and very, very highly respected. So I think he represented a very underrated, but absolutely integral part of pro wrestling. I mean, everybody's got to get the guy started, and the fact that he just did that for so long, whereas so many other guys would say, you know what, if I'm not going to win, I'm not even going to try. And he just worked as hard at that. I mean, he was definitely, still is, one of the hardest working people in the business. Now, obviously, I was very unfamiliar with his personal life, as was everyone else. But he was pretty candid about that too. I mean, I guess compared to New Jack, most people would look pretty clean, but Barry definitely had his share of stories to tell.
Very cool. And yeah, I interviewed Barry in 2011, I want to say, and it was kind of at the request of a coworker of his who was kind of trying to say, hey, claim your role. You did this in pro wrestling. You should be proud of what you did. And it kind of felt like he needed that coaxing from somebody else to bring him out and kind of say, hey, I'm still around, guys, and I'm still here. And everybody that I see on Facebook, he's beloved. There's a lot of people who love him. But one thing that definitely shined through in that interview when I did it with him, and it was one of my favorites, is he seemed to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, if you can say that, about people not thinking that he was a, quote, good wrestler simply because of, as you said, his win-loss record being the what it was. But he played his role. Did you get the feeling that you could kind of light a fire under him and get a story or two out of him, out of the fact that he was a jobber, if that's the appropriate term?
Well, I mean, I don't think it really needed to light a fire. He knew. I mean, he was very realistic about the work that he did, and what his role in the ring was, and he just simply said, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, and with him, obviously it wasn't really about with wrestling. It's some guys get into it because they want to be stars, they want to be famous, they want everybody to know them, to love them, and everything else. And I think Barry understood that it was about the passion for the business. It was about the wrestling itself. It was about doing the best you could do with what you were assigned. And I think that's what people respect about him. Because, like I said, there's always going to be, well, I won't say always, but there's certainly quite a few guys in wrestling who want to be known more than they want to be especially skilled, and that certainly was not him.
Very cool. When he got that push, and I'll get, I just in the book, I'll ask if he talked about it in the book at all. When he got that push in 1995-ish era with the Body Donnas. Yeah, when he got the push, they got the win. He was starting to be featured, teaming with Hakushi, all that kind of stuff. They kind of, the theme song was Have Nagila, and it was kind of like a little, I don't want to say, they always made everybody a caricature, so I didn't necessarily have my ears light up with, like, is this anti-Semitic? But is there any kind of feelings towards how he felt about them using that as his theme and all that in the book?
He never had a problem with it, because it's like you said, it was a caricature. I mean, wrestling is not like a deep, genuine acting performance. It was a character, and it was. I mean, along with Heaven Via, and in his pictures, they'd have him all nerdish with the glasses and the pocket protector and everything else. I mean, it was a little stereotypical, but not to the point that it crossed over into anything offensive. I mean, he simply was like, okay, everyone knows that I'm Barry Horowitz in and out of the ring. My name's the same, and I'm obviously not going to make an issue of and I'm proud of my faith, and if that is just going to become a part of my character, it blends, my personality and my character. So, yeah, I think it got just far enough to be funny, to be kind of cartoonish, but again, just to be a character, just to be a caricature. It did not quite cross, and it's just my opinion that, I mean, they maybe if they'd gone like any farther with it, maybe it could have crossed that line, but he never felt like it did, and so therefore I didn't either.
Very cool. One of the stories I enjoyed in our interview was him talking about traveling down the road with the likes of Tojo Yamamoto and arguing over the radio and playing Motley Crue on the radio and stuff like that. Very cool stories about him. Is there anything that you can share without giving too much away? Because I want people to spend their money and buy the book. Is there any stories you can give away about Barry behind the scenes that maybe we don't know as longtime fans of his?
Well, he has wrestled just about, I'll tell you this. He has wrestled basically every big name in wrestling over the past few decades. He wrestled, everyone from, he wrestled Flair a couple of times. He wrestled the Ultimate Warrior, The Undertaker, wrestled Stone Cold, and everyone else.
Mankind, yeah.
Yeah. He did say that the one regret he never had was that he never got a match with Hogan. He said that that's the one thing he really wanted to do, was just get one match with Hogan. He said he said he was around Hogan. Hogan was very nice. Hogan never said, I don't want to work with him. It was never that kind of issue. But yeah, he did say that he thinks that he and Hogan could have put on a really great show, or had a really great match, like going down to Florida where they're both from, and that would have been, he thought that would have been something very special.
Yeah, if you think about it, Hogan didn't really work with anybody other than the top 5 guys in every company he was in. There was a few. There was a wrestler
on Saturday Night Live. Hogan let himself get counted out to that genius guy, Lanny Poffo. Lanny
Poffo, yes, sir.
And yeah, I think that's kind of what Barry said. If he did a TV match with this guy and lost to him, I think he could have had one good match with me.
True.
But yeah, there was that.
Genius. There was benefit though, because Lanny Poffo was Macho Man's brother, so there's probably some kind of a connection there that he agreed to do that. But
right.
I actually knew Lanny fairly well, but yeah. Hogan also did a match with Boris Zukov, which was, he was on Barry's level, as was a guy named Rusty Brooks. And you're right, I would have really enjoyed seeing Barry Horowitz in there. Very interesting perspective on that one.
Right.
Well, the book is out now. Where can people find it, and where can people find out more books that you have written and maybe are going to be releasing in the future?
On my website, and on excuse me, it's available on Amazon, and you can get it straight from McFarland Publishing.
Awesome. And what is the website address? I think you mentioned it, but I might have mumbled over it. Yes, sir.
It's normanwrights.wordpress.com. Norman Wrights, one word, .wordpress.com.
Very good. All right. Jason Norman, I want to thank you for taking the time and doing this with me today, and I look forward to reading the book. I have mine on the way, and I will definitely be reading it. Last question for you. Mm-hmm. You probably did a lot of research into this book. I'll tell you flat out. I'll tell you mine, and then I'll ask you yours. What was your favorite era of Barry Horowitz's wrestling career? For me, it was the Global Wrestling Federation, where he got a chance to actually do some stuff.
Oh, that is a huge, huge part of the book. That's a big part of the book. And I'll tell you, I don't want to say I was surprised by this, but Buff Bagwell, who is another great alumni for Global, he was very, very helpful with this book. He did a great deal for me. And yeah, that was a big thing for Barry. Yeah, it was.
Yep, he was the handsome stranger for those
Yeah,
who don't know.
right. Yeah, that was that and probably his work with Candido were both pretty big. Oh, there's also a big part in the book about Pile Driver, the music video that the WWF did back in the 1980s. That's big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Barry was a major part of that.
In what way, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, he's actually in the video a couple of times.
Oh, he is the video. Yes, I know that. Yes.
Yeah.
I had Coco Beware on the show once, and I don't know why, but I made him sing it. I made him sing Pile Driver, which was really, really cool, and he did it. So.
I've met him before. He's very nice. Yeah, there was that, and there was quite a bit. There was quite a bit to that. Yeah, Barry was well. He was very proud of all of his career, and obviously there were. I'll tell you, he did not want to talk. There were when we'd run into instances where people. He didn't like the people that he was working with. He would always say, "Well, I don't want to name their name, but here's what happened here and here and here." So yeah, and I told him, I said, "Look, this is not going to be some tabloid, behind the scenes, tell all thing. I'll let other people do that." But yeah, there's a lot of great stories about guys who were, some were very different, and others not so much from their persona.